Okay guys, so if you are limited to a strict budget of $100 and you can only get one bait cast reel, then the good news is that you're not going to be lacking in choice. Now in fact, I went on Tackle Warehouse and I counted all the $100 bait casters from all the mainstream companies, and I counted a total of 15 different $100 bait casters. And in fact, I have 3 of them in front of you right here from 3 of the biggest reel companies in the world. You got your REVO X from GARCIA, your CG80 from Daiwa, and then you got your really popular SLX from Shimano. Now at the $100 price point, what you're gonna get is basically a workhorse reel with decent performance and very few frills or high-end kind of features. And that's where the problem comes in. Now all these reels, at least from my experience, are going to be really lacking in one thing, and that's versatility. So enter the Lurestar C9 Air. And this is a bait caster from China. And this thing costs roughly between $85 to $90. So it's actually a little bit cheaper than $100. But I believe this thing could be a potential game changer. And it all comes down to that one word that I brought up, and that's versatility. So as you know, I'm no stranger to buying tackle from AliExpress or China. And most of the reels I've bought though have been no more than $60. And they've been more on the bait finesse side of things. I've never actually thought of any reel from China around the $100 price point as being worth it until this reel came along. And the reason being is that this reel is more versatile than any other bait caster from the mainstream manufacturers, and I'm about to show you how. Okay guys, so I have the Lurestar C9 Air mounted on a JACKALL BPM 6'9" medium heavy. I think I have 12 or 14 pound fluorocarbon. And we're fishing a Demicky, I think it's the Air Craw, on a JITICA rig. So let's see what we can catch.
Oh, damn. There we go. Bass on the Lurestar C9 Air. He tore that tore that Demicky rig apart. Let's let him go. All right, guys, so I drove up probably about a good 10 miles from where I caught that bass, and I decided I wanted to fish for trout. So I have the Lurestar C9 Air mounted on the Ace Hawk CU double, and I'm going to be throwing this Lucky Craft Pointer 48. It weighs about 2.2 grams. Let's see if we can catch something. As you can see, there's a bunch of fog. It's been raining here. I think it's a perfect time to catch some trout.
Okay guys, so as you can see by the fishing footage, the versatility of the Lurestar C9 Air is actually pretty damn amazing. And I bring up versatility once again, and the reason I'm saying that is because, at least in my opinion, most guys these days who bass fish also target other fish as well. Crappie fishing is very popular, as well as trout fishing. So the reason why you need a reel that's versatile, especially if you're on a budget, is that you want to be able to target those other fish without having to spend the money on a whole nother combo just for those smaller species. And as you can see by the footage, I was able to target bass using the standard bass size lure of about 1/2 ounce in weight, and then drive over to my trout spot, put the reel on a bait finesse rod, and throw several really light bait finesse lures, including this super tiny 1.2 gram trout magnet on this 1/32 ounce head, and be able to cast it with enough fishability and distance to be able to catch that little walleye. So you're probably wondering, how in the hell is a cheap Chinese reel able to do all that? Now, does it have some kind of a new revolutionary brake system? Let's check it out. And the answer is going to be no. It's got the typical generic standard Korean mag-track style brake system that you'll find on pretty much every other magnetic brake reel outside of, Shimano and Daiwa. So how was the C9 Air able to do it? And the answer is really simple. This thing right here. It comes with a really lightweight shallow spool standard. You don't have to spend any extra money to buy this spool. It comes with the reel out of the box. Now the standard spool, the deep version, is already pretty light. Without the bearing, this thing weighs about 12.5 grams. And that's Shimano METANIUM territory right there. But the shallow spool is even lighter. If you remove this bearing, this thing weighs only 8.5 grams. And I have removed the bearing and weighed it. So that's lighter than a much more expensive Scorpion BFS spool. So basically all I did was, when I was done targeting bass, I drove up to my trout area, I took the reel and put it on the bait finesse rod, and then I just took out the deep spool and popped the shallow spool in, which was already pre-spooled with 4-pound line, and I went trout fishing. Simple as that. Now, the reason why the Lurestar C9 Air could be a game changer is because with the big three companies, Shimano, Abu, and Daiwa, what they want you to do to get this kind of versatility is to buy the standard reel, and I'm going to use the Scorpion 70 for an example. And if you want to be able to throw super lightweight lures for trout or crappie or whatever, then they want you to spend the money on the bait finesse version, which is more often than not more expensive than the standard version. So you're looking at spending money on 2 reels when they could have just, included a shallow spool like the Lurestar C9 Air and given you that bang for your buck and that value. Now, when it comes to the other companies that make $100 bait casters, the best you can hope for is to pray that somebody will make a shallow spool for your reel. And in fact, I did my research, and out of all 15 $100 bait casters, there's only one reel where there's a shallow spool made for it, and that is the REVO X. And the problem with that, there's actually 2 problems. Now, the first problem is that it's only available in China, and it's not even on AliExpress, for ease of purchase. You have to go through some hoops to import that spool over. And when you do the conversion to American dollars, that spool costs more than the reel itself. So that takes this budget-friendly REVO X to a not so budget-friendly $200 reel. Now, in the past, I've shown videos of where the Shimano SLX was able to throw bait finesse lures if you only fill the spool maybe a third of the way. But the problem with that is the convenience. Now, there was no way without, great inconvenience I was going to be able to do that on the very same fishing trip with the SLX. Because basically I'd have to unspool this full spool of line of the heavier fluoro, find somewhere to put it, and then of course spool up some lighter line on the reel. And even with spooling, the spool only a third of the way, I don't think it would have casted quite as good as the shallow spool on this Lurestar C9 Air. So yeah, the Lurestar C9 Air could be a game changer in the fishing industry. So now that I've shown you how versatile the C9 Air is, let's go over the specs. And basically when I go over these specs, you'll see that this reel actually has the specs of top of the line reels costing 3 to 4 times as much. But before we do that, let's just talk about the styling and the looks of this reel. Now, I personally think this is a really, really good looking reel, and just by looking at it, you'll see that this thing has Shimano styling cues all over it. Now, it's got the top section that's very similar to the CHRONARCH and METANIUM, but more CHRONARCH than METANIUM, as you can see there. And size-wise, it's a little bit smaller than the CHRONARCH. Hopefully the camera will pick that up. Now the side plate, you can see the contours. It is pretty much a copy of the ALDEBARAN, right down to the placement of the latch that you use to be able to take off the side plate. And then it's got these little ridges on top of the frame that copy the now discontinued CITICA. And of course, you got your swept drag star. The thumb bar kind of resembles a Shimano design. But yeah, let's go over the specs. Now, first of all, this thing is made of carbon, not graphite. It's got a carbon frame and side plates, and it's put together very, very well. Now, my personal example of this reel is very, very smooth. There's no gaps in the frame. There's no quality control issues that I see. It's got a matte coating that feels really, really high-end and smooth and pleasant to touch. It's got a total of 12 bearings, so that's 11 plus 1 bearings. It's got a carbon fiber handle that's 95 millimeters and it's swept. So pretty much this reel is probably 90% carbon fiber. And there's also carbon fiber trim in this little trim piece here, this little ring. And of course the drag star clicks, and the spool tension actually clicks as well. And it's not really, that micro click positiveness of like a Daiwa spool tension, but it does click. As you can see, it's got the red accents, it's made of aluminum, and it's got that little, I guess that little notch there to show you where you are. Now this thing has a Shimano style cone shaped line guide where it tapers off. It's bigger in the back and it tapers off to the front to reduce that friction angle. Now I've shown you it had magnetic brakes, but this thing I believe has a total of 32 settings, while most reels that have magnetic brakes this style have only 28 settings, so it's very adjustable. Now for right now, it only comes in a 7:1 high-speed ratio, and it's got the foam knobs. It's got the Lurestar symbol on them. But yeah, you definitely get a lot of reel for the money. But one of the best parts about this reel is the weight, or lack of. Okay, so I pulled the scale out to show you guys just how little this thing weighs. So this thing weighs 5.4 ounces. I don't know if you guys can see that. I'm going to see if I can zoom in. 5.4 ounces. So this weighs less than a STEEZ, if I'm not mistaken. And it is really, really light. Just to put into perspective, here's a Shimano core. Now, of course, this is made of magnesium, but this thing was $370 back in the day. And this thing weighs almost 5.6 ounces. So yeah, for those of you who are looking to get your first ultralight reel, this could be definitely a serious consideration for you, considering all the other features that it has. Now overall, I think this is a great first effort from the Chinese market to produce a higher end reel. Now, there are some things that could use improving, but not as much as you would think. Now the first thing is the thumb bar. Well, it's nice and positive. Doesn't appear to be any kind of mush. I don't think the clutch mechanism can handle lures heavier than 5/8 of an ounce. Because when I was throwing lures, heavier than half an ounce, I felt that the thumb bar was being strained. And another thing is the coating. While it's really, really nice to feel, it's not that durable. As you can see, it's starting to wear down and show some shine on the area where where it comes into contact with my hand the most. Right on this hump right here on the palm side plate. And one other thing I can think of is that the brakes, they need to be a tad bit stronger. Now as they are now, they work just fine, but they're pretty similar to any other MagTrack style braking system from Abu, LEWS, or whatever, where you can't really turn the brakes down very much without blowing the spool up. And that's with any lure, not just bait finesse. So it needs a little bit stronger brakes. But other than that, it performed flawlessly. I've had this reel for a few months now, fishing it on and off, caught a few fish on it. And if you want to buy this reel, I'm gonna leave a link in the description on where you can purchase it. And in the future, sometime really, really soon, I'm gonna be giving this reel away in a contest. And not this particular reel that I've kind of worn the coating off of. It's gonna be this reel right here. It's a brand new, never fished Lurestar C9 Air. As you can see, it comes with a bag and it's got the shallow spool right there. And this is courtesy of someone who owns a store, I think on AliExpress. He had contacted me after I had done a video on the Ace Hawk CU double, and apparently a lot of you guys went out and bought that rod, so he wanted to give thanks, and he gave me an option of a few things that I could pick from his store. I thought that I would pick another C9 Air and give it to one of you guys, so be out on the lookout for that. But there you go, guys. As it stands, if you are on a strict budget of $100 or less and you can only get one baitcaster, personally, for the type of fishing that I do, where I don't just target bass, I target trout, and some of you guys may target crappie and you need to downsize that lure, then the Lurestar C9 Air should definitely be in consideration. Okay guys, thanks a lot.